Okay. It's amazing how much younger all those people in the documentary were than, the people who we see now. But
for yourself, Michael.
wish I could. Anyway, so let me go ahead and introduce our panel on my right, your left is Jim Sanderson, and Jim is the cinematographer, photographer, and well, you were the guy that I dealt with at the archive when it came to the photographs and some of the film and some of those sorts of things. So you were the guy that I dealt with more often than anything else on the documentary. And then next to him is Andrea Galvin, who is, yes, you would be the director and the producer of the documentary, and
The production team, but
yeah.
director and writer.
And you are, I believe you are, in fact, the president of GPA.
Yeah.
Okay, and you were one of those contractors that worked with Bureau of Engineering to do outreach, and I'm curious to find out what else you did for the project as well. And then at my far right, your left, is the city engineer for the city of Los Angeles, Mr. Gary Lee Moore. And and I know we were talking backstage beforehand, and so there was a few things we wanted to kind of get cleared off right off the bat, so we can get into the meat of the conversation, and a couple of them had to do with, and I guess there is not an actual date yet for the bridge. We were being having a little fun with that earlier.
Well, there is a date, and very, 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 very soon you're going to see something announcing the opening, and it's going to be a really fun weekend. And
Okay.
I would say very, very soon.
Very, very soon. Because when we actually started planning having this discussion at this day, it was hoped that it would tie into all of these events leading up to the dedication and the rededication of the bridge, and of course that schedule has kind of shifted a little bit, as these things generally do, and so we will have a date soon.
Yeah,
Very
I would watch the news this week. Yeah.
All right, okay, folks, you heard it here first. And I guess something else we want to kind of get cleared out of the way right off the top, and I know that in the documentary there was also some footage of Jose Huizar, who's having some problems of his own at the moment. And so to that point, I wanted to ask you, what was his involvement and support of the project? Just want to kind of get that cleared out.
At the time, Councilman Huizar represented his Council District 14 in the bridge. The 6th Street Viaduct is located in the 14th District, and he was nothing but supportive during the entire project.
And basically, you told me that he made sure that you got all the contractors you wanted.
Yeah, every consultant, every contractor, it was all what we wanted. And
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. And so looking at the way that this particular the new bridge, it was so different in the way it was designed, the way that it was funded, the way that basically everything. I mean, it seemed that it had absolutely no connection to the way that bridges had been done earlier. Just because that so much time has evolved, the techniques have gotten better, the processes have gotten more sophisticated. What constitutes being an engineer has probably changed quite a bit since, say, in the teens and 20s and 30s, when most of the other bridges were built. And the idea of bringing in an architect, an outside architect to help design the thing. And I'm just kind of curious as to why that may have been. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who used to be an architect for a number of years, and he said that what an architect brings is he knows the language of an engineer. He knows the language of the construction trade and the other components of what would go into an infrastructure project like this. And so that would almost sound like the way we would describe a project manager these days, is someone who knows to get the, to get the experts, get the consultants, bring everyone in. And again, one of the questions I had about, Michael Maltzen is that because a project like this, you've got so much money coming from so many different sources. And I'm sure that every one of those sources has got a caveat, yeah, but, or you need to do this or do that. And so, funding commitments, technical complexities that are, beyond what we would normally have had in civil engineering. And let's face it, there's sometimes a bias against projects that are managed in-house as opposed to going to an outside entity to kind of look over one shoulder. Is there any validity to any of those arguments?
Well, I'll start. First, I want to just thank Jim and Andrew, because if you saw in their movie, Michael, everything that they captured building the original 6th Viaduct, we did again. There was architects involved with Mel Butler. It was a very key and an important opportunity. I've worked for the city 37 years. I'm retiring at the end of July, and I've had 19 years as city engineer, and I started on this bridge 19 years ago, this 6th Street Viaduct. So it's very special to see it come to this opening. But what was great about looking at the past, and we've been able to preserve the other structures, is the important, when we went out for the call for projects, we said it needs to be multimodal. The bridges, as you saw, the original bridges were really about cars, and this one needs to be more. It had to be about the pedestrian, it had to be about the bicyclist and the vehicles. So this actual new viaduct is 40 feet wider, and it allows for two bike lanes, one in each direction, 10-foot wide, protected bike lanes. The sidewalks are much wider. And then when you get out there very shortly and you see this pedestrian bicycle helical ramp, 3.5 level helical ramp that will take you up to the, from the ground up to the bridge deck, but then it actually takes you underneath and around to the other side. It's, it just really, all this, we knew this in writing the proposals, that an architect was going to be so important, and that it couldn't just be a linear, excuse me, we were not envisioning just a flat truss bridge.
And so does that help to expand what a bridge can do other than just being a piece of infrastructure?
Well, that's exactly what we envisioned when we were going out for the call, was just that it is an important component and fabric of this community, and also for Los Angeles. And we just believe that this opportunity is here where you can be during the day, during the evening, you can go around, you can just enjoy this, and it's just so much more than just bringing vehicles. But
yeah. And that was something, I guess, I actually saw another interview with Maltzen, and he was explaining the idea of an observatory, that the bridge as an observatory is supposed just being a thing to traverse, where like the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, and the Griffith Observatory he included, these were places that people would go to and stop and look and observe, and kind of like what was discussed with the Belvederes and some of the early bridge design. This particular, the new 6th Street is going to be so much more than that, just from the concepts that I've seen, where there's things going on below. I understand they've actually saved one of the arches, and it's going to be the basis of, hopefully will be a nice museum historic center space, from what I hear.
Well, I don't know about that historic space, but there's going to be a 12-acre park underneath, and that part of it will make it into that new 12-acre park. And I think also here is it's stopping and celebrating. I picture people getting engaged on the new 6th Street Viaduct. There's 5 sets of stairs, that will take you 65 feet up in the air. So I picture people, the exercise route and so forth like that. And it's just going to be a gathering place, which is what we want. How it can be, it's not just that 30 seconds across it, but it's about stopping and enjoying.
Well, that'll certainly redefine what a bridge would be like. But on the other hand, with what they've done with the LA River itself, I mean the bike paths that's out there now, and kayaking that you can actually do in parts of the river now, and with Glendale Hyperion, with the work that they were doing out there, that was kind of stop and start, and it looks like I think they finally got most of that done, didn't they? They put pedestrian, and they were talking in the film about the red car line that used to cross there. They actually had some sort of pedestrian crossing there over that site that kind of commemorates where the red car line was. I mean, that one kind of got a little lost with the pandemic and of course 6th Street, I guess. But
right, we've built
more than one bridge at work.
Right, we've built a pedestrian bridge across the old red car pilings, and actually next year we'll start the seismic rehabilitation of the Glendale Hyperion. So luckily we do not have to demolish it, and we're able to repair it. And so that's the new red car pedestrian bridge is very exciting and connects to the bike path. And that's another one of our passions is the Los Angeles River revitalization. And when we came out with our master plan in 2007, and when we wrote this call for this new viaduct, it was very much in our minds how it would interface. And part of the park is actually underneath, which will start construction at the end of this year, is going to have the Leonard Hill amphitheater underneath there. So you're going to have some great sounds, great spaces, and so it's and that connects right into the tunnel that leads to the river.
Wow, so there's still a lot going on, still a lot to be done. And what the community that's been watching this thing go up for the last few years? What are their feelings? Have they expressed to you what they like, what they don't like, and are they anticipating the completion of the project?
Well, the community's been outstanding. To go through the demolition, to go through the construction, and through the entire planning stage, going to all those community meetings. We went together. You make friends, and they've been fantastic. They've just been fantastic, and we just can't wait to celebrate with them the opening. And we thank them so much for being so supportive.
Okay, and Andrea and Jim. So I'm trying to think how far back this was. Was it 2014 or 2015? You guys first started asking us at the City Archive if we had photographs or any materials, and you'd already been working on this thing for some time prior to that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a very personal project because I've worked on so many of these actual rehabilitation projects that you saw in the film over the course of the last 20 years, I think, since I've been working with the city. And the fun part about this project was being able to document the whole process. So as you could see, like, Jim's there, like, like late at night, like battling the vagrants under the bridges, trying to get the best shots. And like we were, at the competition event, we were at the groundbreaking, we were kind of like following this process all the way along, which was really great. But I think it was probably 2014 when we really started reaching out and doing the research, which was a huge component of this. And I don't want to take full credit. Obviously, I spent many late nights pouring through historic photographs, finding just the right image for what it was we were trying to say. But I did have a whole team of researchers and people helping me as well. And Michael and, the archives at USC, the LA Public Library, the Automobile Club. I reached out to many, the Historical Society to get these like one-of-a-kind images, many of which had never been seen before. So it was a real joy poring over those historic images and Michael was phenomenal. And Jen, maybe you want to tell the story about when we found some of the early footage that we didn't even know existed. And Michael went in and found this. What was the type of film like that?
16 millimeter.
Yeah, 16 millimeter. And we had to find a machine to use it just so we could see what was there. And then to like find this like awesome footage of like the early railroads and the early car crossing and conflict to tell that was really part of the excitement of producing and creating this film.
Well, and some of that actually because it was actually produced by the Public Works Department. I mean, for a number of years, they had a construction unit from about 1925 until I think it was sometime in the 60s when it got rolled over with a lot of the other, what had been freestanding divisions, they got rolled over into other things. But they would document everything that the city was doing, whether it was sidewalks, sewers, tons of sewers, lots of sewers, more sewer construction photographs than you ever want to see in one lifetime. But they also documented the building of the bridges. They documented parts of Union Station being built, and it was just an absolutely dynamite collection that, frankly, we were lucky enough to have, but hadn't been utilized. And so when Jim and Andrea reached out to us, said, "Do you have anything?" And we showed them the first few things, and they got so excited. We showed them a few more things, and then a few more things. It was like the ultimate drug deal.
It was incredible.
The first little taste, and then you get a little bit further in, and then you've got them. They're hooked. And it's just because it's a wonderful collection that no one had ever really seen. This was stuff that was shot for probably the city's edification as much as anything else. It was just to document what was going on. It was all inside baseball, and the photographs are almost never used. And so now suddenly here's an opportunity to show this stuff in ways that had never, had never been anticipated to be shared with the wider world. And and thank God we had a chance to do that. And there's more. There's more stuff from that period too.
Well, one of the things I want to say is that this is the largest collection of concrete arch bridges in the U.S. And the 6th Street Viaduct at the time it was constructed was the most expensive and largest civic project in America at the time. So it's really cool to have been able to work on this project, but also to witness the new bridge that's been constructed, which is also one of the largest and most expensive, right? So we continue to create history here. That came out of your pocket, I presume, right? No, it was funded by a lot of people.
But Mr. Moore, there's so much more technology. I mean, it is definitely a ultra modern bridge that's being built now. Some of the information I saw that they have all sorts of sensors and things like that to measure, whether the concrete is settling or it just seems that there's so much more information that's going to be available from the bridge itself that we're going to be able to, that we being the people who are going to be preserving it are going to have available to know when something needs to be worked on, and so we can get that century plus out of it that was the goal, was the aspiration.
Yeah, and building the new 6th Street Viaduct, it has these cables, and they have to be tensioned, and you have to. They're very temperature sensitive when you're setting it all up. So all of these cables had what we call strain gauges on them, and they were all connected together, Wi-Fi together. So it was being monitored 24 hours a day to make sure that the bridge would end up where it's supposed to. The bridge will continue to settle a little bit over the next 10 years. It's really impressive when you talk to the structural engineers on this and you see a spreadsheet on steroids. I've never seen a spreadsheet with as many columns as the structural engineers have done in this project. And so all of this is designed to the bridge is to withstand a 1,000-year seismic event, and it's built on the largest triple friction pendulum bearings. And when you go out there, it looks like the entire bridge, and it is supported by these bearings. And and it is special. I want to be there when there's an earthquake, actually, because we also did City Hall, which is base isolated. I was in there for an earthquake in a meeting. I was so excited because, this is like, okay, does it work? And it did. It was great. And then here, these bearings can move in 30 inches. What actually happens is the bridge won't move that much. It's the ground that's shifting. And so the lower house, so let's all hope that there is no earthquake, and I really don't want there to be an earthquake, but if there is one, this new bridge can withstand a 1,000-year seismic event. So it's special. The special testing that we had to set up with the University of California, San Diego, everything pushed the limits a little bit. And the last thing I'll just say is all the arches cant 9 degrees. And when you go out there, all the safety railing also cants 9 degrees. So Michael Maltzon and his team, along with HNTB, there's a lot of thought and detail that goes through this entire structure.
Great. And in the documentary, for those of you who looked at some of that wonderful drone footage, going over the bridges and going over these things, and when I first saw that footage 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was the first drone footage I'd ever seen, use it for cinematography, and that was relatively new at the time. Now, of course, it's everywhere. I mean, everyone has access to a drone with a camera on it, and this and that. But you were definitely, I mean, I was blown away the first time I saw some of that stuff that you were showing me that you'd shot. And but how much time did you actually put in on your part of the project between doing the cinematography, doing the research, working with photographic sources? We got that piece of film digitized that Andrea talked about one day that showed the trains at street level and all that. So how much time did you put in? How many years was that?
At least a couple of years.
Yeah.
And, the tricky part about the drone was there are so many transmission towers and lines that go down both banks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, wow, just getting used. And then drapers that would be in the middle of the river from one side to the other, that the railroads were pushing that stuff around. So, you hit one of those and your drone is later. But what we tried to do in the movie and the book is show elevations at 500 feet where a drone couldn't fly that high, and we kind of merged those two together so that just the experience of the book and the movie, where you just have a really beautiful crane shot, or sequencing them in the book with actual elevations from the riverbed to drone to heli, and then camera car on the decks, and then dawn and night stuff. Yeah.
We really wanted to show the bridges, both in the book and the film, in ways that people don't typically experience them, right? Because a lot of people experience the bridges as connectors. And so it's maybe part of their daily commute where they're crossing the bridge. And you're seeing it from the bridge deck on top. Unless you do walk across them, you have the opportunity to see from bridge to bridge. But when we did our helicopter work and we were hanging on to him and he's out the window, the helicopter, like filming some of this stuff, you get to see the whole collection. Like most people, unless you're flying into LA, I guess sometimes you can see that from an airplane, but most people don't get to experience it that way. And one of our interviewees talked about the bridges being like the jewels of the river. And that's really how we were trying to show in a very cinematic way, to make it a topic that could be considered boring, maybe, a bridge, right? To be very exciting and dramatic.
Wait a second there. Wait a second.
I love bridges because I'm a little bit of a bridge nerd myself. But
I'm not feeling the love right now, Andrea. So, whoa.
Oh, come on, Gary. I love your bridges. No, but I mean, most people think of a bridge as just getting from point A to point B. And I think that the movie and the book is titled Bridging Los Angeles because it bridged politics. It bridged, the story goes so much beyond just, concrete and arches.
But of course, came back to what what Gary just was concerned about was the I mean, we think of buildings as these great architectural monuments, and whereas bridges are infrastructure, they're defined differently. But why can't they both be monuments? And certainly that's what Merrill Butler and those guys did back back in the last century. And so looking at, well, again, we've got great architecture. We're still building great architecture in the city, but because we also have to pay attention to our seismic circumstances that we have to deal with, is it fair to say that we're becoming more we're becoming so fine-tuned to the limitations of the ground under our feet, literally, that are we becoming one of the better architectural cities with with earthquake as a factor, and whether it's a building or whether it's infrastructure or any other type of structure that that the city is likely to build. And I rambled on that a little bit. I'm just trying to come up with some clarity.
I know we're talking about the 6th Street Viaduct, but architecture has always been very important to me personally. And during the last 19 years, built almost 20 fire stations and 10 police stations, and we built other bridges and so forth. Architecture it's a requirement. There's no way to build something that doesn't bring in the civic, in the public world. It's important. What it brings to the communities, the pride to the communities, the love for the communities. And so architecture is just key. And so I don't have the artistic ability to be an architect, but I just so much respect their visioning. And, when we're sitting there and we're talking about how you incorporate the surrounding community, how you surround, the historic view. I mean, what we've done here with Jim and Andrea have done, that was always on our minds. It was paying homage and respect to our history. And so I think the new one, I'm prejudiced, but it so beautifully does that. And yet, if I was rebuilding if I had to tear down my 1932 house, I would definitely want internet. I would not want to go, but at the same time, I want to respect, the key components that it had and the family rooms and so forth. And so that's always been a passion of mine, is to respect the past, but definitely build for the future. And Andrew, I guess one of the questions that I had was the film was a great idea, not just because it used our stuff and got to be in this, but what was the original goal of making the documentary, and then what kind of a life has it had since we all saw it, at the
yeah, I think that's a really great question. As I mentioned, I've been involved in supporting the Bureau of Engineering and the Bridge Program for a number of years on many of their historic bridges. And it was something that we started talking about, I think, probably with the Riverside at Zoo Drive. And that was maybe in 2000 or 2001. Really telling the story because, part of my job too is to conduct research and writing and help rehabilitate significant historic buildings and structures. And I was surprised at how little was known about the bridges. Now, Steve Mikesell, who was one of our interviewees and a good friend and colleague of mine, is one of the few bridge nerds, I think, in my profession. And he had written an article about the LA bridges, and that was pretty much it. And we thought, this story really needs to be told. So as we were working with the BOE and coming up with different projects, a project like this is it's a substantial undertaking, both financially and time-wise, and and we had to find an appropriate project that could support that. And when the 6th Street Viaduct project came up, that was when we thought, okay, great, here's our opportunity. You know, it's a large project, there's funding. There's a lot of laws that come into play when it comes to restoring and preserving historic properties, and that's what I help navigate my clients with. And the law that protects requires mitigation if you're going to cause an adverse effect on historic property. And this bridge was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Therefore, it's not only important, you know, nationally, but it's also a local landmark. And as you saw in the film, the first to be demolished in the city of Los Angeles. So it was a really big deal. It was very emotional. A lot of people were really upset because it's so iconic, and you see it in all the car commercials and movies and like this. So people really came out of the woodwork. So we felt that this was a perfect opportunity to get something back to the public. And we're losing something of great value. So mitigation is something that I'm really passionate about and part of the preservation process, but providing something useful, something that is accessible and interesting. And, you know, and I am a lover of documentaries, and it's super fun, you know, doing this. We've done a few together, and we have a lot of fun. But in the same regard, the bottom line is it's only good if it's useful and accessible. So at the opening, we had the premiere, and that had several hundred people. It was really a great, well-attended event. And then when they had the groundbreaking, they had a party on the bridge, and there was music and people from Boyle Heights, and everybody came out, and they had you know, their hot rods and all the Chicano people and the arts and community, and everyone from LA was there, and it was just a really incredible event, and the film was shown there. And so it's just really fun to be a part of these significant events in the city of Los Angeles' history as we continue to write this, and events like this are really important, I think, too, in sharing. But it is on YouTube, it is accessible to the public, it's on the city's website as well, links to it. So the concept was, if we're going to lose something so important, we need to be able to give something back. But now we have the story about all the bridges, and we'd even talked about doing a little series because each bridge has its own story, right? We could probably do one on each, but do you want to share anything on that?
Well, just the collection process was when you realize that there was an agreement between the design teams that every bridge was going to be unique from each other, a different look. It really made it like, it was an eye-opener. Even like on Cesar Chavez Bridge, just the railings, the balusters were twisted like a ½ inch. That's how crazy it was. Someone really got into it. And then you just look at railings on all of these bridges, all the details, it's just like, it's pretty mind-blowing how they really got into it. So it made it really fun to just explore those details, and especially in the book, like not a lot of time to explore in the movie storyline, but in the book you'll see just what I'm talking about. So.
And just to just for the record, the book is available after we're finished here. Am I correct?
Yeah, I brought a few copies. I have a few in the garage, in the car as well. So if we don't have one here for you to take home, you can give me your info and we can get them sent to you.
All right, great. Is there room to compare Merrill Butler to as far as the significance of what he brought to engineering, as far as the infrastructure projects and the other things that he worked on over his long career, to William Mulholland and what he did with the water projects and the dams and so forth? Is there room to compare the two, or are they two completely different individuals? Their visions were completely different. The end results were different. I mean, can you put those two in the same sentence, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
I don't know. You know, we all need water. So I'll put water one, but I'll definitely put Merrill Butler. You know, he was a visionary, and his his understanding of the importance and the passion to deliver. He's definitely an important person in the history of Los Angeles. And, you know, as a fellow Bureau of Engineering employee, you know, it pained us on the 6th Street, you know, and I want everybody to leave here knowing none of the other bridges are being demolished. There's no plan to demolish them. We've seismically retrofitted them, or going to finish the last one with the Glendale. So it's very important. Here in Los Angeles, we all know that our history is very brief, and there's a lot of demolition here, and we didn't take it lightly. So no, I think Mel was definitely a visionary. But once again, it's not any one individual. It was the entire team. As you heard there, you know, the city was, you know, had an arts commission. You know, it wasn't one individual. And I think that's the same thing here. It's never one individual. It was an incredible team that has sacrificed so much for a very, very close announcement coming very, very soon about the opening.
Okay, and so with that hanging over our heads, why don't we go ahead and do a little bit of Q&A, because I'm sure there's a few questions out there. I do have a couple of people with microphones. Let's see, Bob's over there. There you are. If anyone has a question, raise your hand, and one of the guys, whoever's close to you, will bring the microphone, and let's get some questions.
Guys, and hi Andrea, I didn't recognize you with the mask on. So I wanted to know, as it related to the film, it's an applied history project in many ways, and it was funded as a mitigation measure for the tearing down of the bridge?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other comment that I wanted to make in reference to what Michael was saying about the engineer's architecture influence and comparing it to Mulholland. These were civic projects, and it was civic architecture. I would even compare it to like Eiffel and some of the people who built some of the iconic bridges in New York and some other places around the country.
What I'd like to know is, why were the bridges designed originally with a different look?
Did we ever find out the answer to that?
You mean a different look from each other, or the shift from like metal truss to concrete?
You mean like the architectural style, like those arts are streamlined up?
Yeah,
later?
so around the turn of the century, there was a movement going nationally called the City Beautiful movement. And this started in, cities like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. A lot of architects were starting to push the envelope of looking back actually toward the Greek architecture originally. So like more of the iconic, and that's where the Beaux-Arts movement came out of, a school of architecture called the École des Beaux-Arts. And from that, it was basically a rejection to the period before that, which was more of an industrial period, and the Victorian era that was very opulent and almost, as we would say today, too much. But each era is a reflection of the era before, and a lot of eras in design reject the previous design and then come up with something new. So this was a movement that was about beautifying cities, cleaning up the industrial movement, and also having iconic architecture for civic projects in particular. That, coupled with the accessibility to the concrete and the pliable plastic material, allowed them to do the form work and make it more beautiful, as opposed to shipping in metal trusses across the railroad. So it was a very conscious decision on the part of the planners within the city of LA. We also had the Civic Center design and concept. Actually, there were, I think, about 3 different ones over the course of its evolution, never having been fully realized as initially designed, but at least nonetheless, this was also a part of that. So the earliest bridge was actually, was it, which one? Main? It was Main Street, and it was at grade. So it was before they elevated everything over the railroad tracks. And it was a pretty simple design, probably the earliest, I think, concrete arch bridge in America was, I think, 1908, 1909, and this was built just about the same time, 1909, 910. And so there was this experimentation with concrete as well. So there was this interest in like, what can we do with this new plastic pliable material? And what is really interesting is we also had the art jury, the Arts Commission predecessor, and they actually had say in this, not in, only in addition to the actual architects. So the architect that did Broadway Street, which was the second bridge and the most elaborate one, actually went through several iterations. And in reading some of the newspaper articles on that bridge in particular, it was originally designed with like lions and animals on it. And I had no idea. And we were reading these old articles, but it went to the jury, the art jury, and they nixed it. They were like, no, we're not having animals on our bridges. So there was this, just this perfect storm of different factors involved, right? This monumental sort of program coupled with this new material that they could use with the City Beautiful movement. And that's, I think, part of the reason why each bridge was slightly different. And then in addition, some of them were, form follows function, right? So some of the bridges, Main Street in particular, which was the original one, when you look at the ribs underneath, they're different widths. And so I want to challenge your statement, Gary, that it wasn't multimodal, because actually Main Street was multimodal. The middle ribs are much wider for the streetcars that went down the middle, and then the middle lanes were a little bit narrower for the vehicles, and then the outer lanes were for pedestrians. So each bridge has its own unique features, and every time they were doing it, they were engineering. One of the other ones too were some of the connections between how they did the arches. So, and what we tried to do in the book was highlight each bridge individually and talk about what was unique about each one. So I encourage you to look at that, because there's only so much we can fit in the film, right? But each bridge has unique engineering and architecture, which is what I think makes it an amazing collection.
Hear a word or two about the bridge designers?
Well, the stamps were, the plans were stamped by Merrill Butler. So this is one in particular that we know for sure worked on the bridge. But like we've all kind of stated previously, there was a whole team of folks that were working on it. Some of the architects, his name is escaping me, but on the Broadway Street Bridge, there was a local architect that had designed many of the theaters around town, which is why it has the belvederes and the amphitheater and stuff. It was also the first bridge that people saw as they came into town on the railroad. So that was something too that was a lot of thought was put into that. We only have access, obviously, to what we've been able to collect through public records, so it's hard to get into the minds of what some of these architects were thinking at the time. But I think today, being able to see the process that the bridge designers went through, the design competition, it was really amazing to really get into their mind and to see how they visioned. At the end, you saw 3 of the different designs that were proposed, and then finally Maltson's design that was selected. But they were all uniquely beautiful, and any one of them could have been an iconic bridge today.
Okay.
It's hard to tell from the renditions, but are the arches going to be painted white, and are they going to be lit?
So the bridge is not going, the new 6th Street Viaduct will not be painted. And there's 140 LED lights that will light all the arches from the ground, actually, and from the bridge deck. And we can make it any color we want. So we're for the opening night, we picked a color, and then so it's exciting to. It'll be very exciting to see it lit up.
When is that opening?
Very, very, very soon. Like I said.
And question there.
I had the opportunity, I was downtown at 2, 3 in the morning at one time, and I have to say that for, I think, Mr. Sanderson here to be photographing at night downtown took a lot of courage, and I'm still in awe that somebody would go down there, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about the safety concerns that you must have faced at that hour. And also one other question is concerned about the graffiti problem that we have in the city and that we've had for years now. Are there certain precautions that the city is taking to, inevitably there will be graffiti on the bridges? Are they able to pretty much eliminate that as it occurs quickly, blending in with the materials that the bridges are constructed of?
I'll let you go first on your good news part.
That's why the book is in black and white, because the graffiti is minimized in that respect. But there were several interesting situations at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because I did so much shooting at night or dawn or dusk. There was a cascade of interesting characters, but just going out there often, everybody just kind of relaxed and left me alone, and or would say hi. So
the mayor did propose, and city council, there's money allocated for graffiti removal for the new viaduct. We've unfortunately had a little bit during construction, and I hope once it's open that it won't happen, but we're prepared if it does.
Okay, and I think it was a question over on that side. Hold on, we need to get a mic.
Yeah, in the back there.
I could. Oh,
All right,
Okay.
okay.
I'll give this over to you.
Okay. We're just trying to coordinate. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I am Merrill Butler III.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for putting this together, and I was crying, and you can't imagine the emotions, because it's, I knew him I was even in his office in City Hall when I was growing up, and also I knew him on Christmas morning when he came with presents. I mean, it's just the whole. I knew all about him, and I revered him so much, and one of the greatest gifts he gave me was a telescope. And he would come, and he and I would look at the stars together, and he would explain Venus and Mars, and we'd go to the Griffith Observatory, and we would spend hours there with the shows and everything, just incredible. And he lit my fire for intellectual curiosity. And my dad was a civil engineer, Merrill Butler Jr. He was a home builder here in Southern California, built probably 10,000 houses in Southern Cal. But I was not, pointed in that direction, and instead I went into real estate finance. And then now my hobby is astrophysics, which is really exciting. But the long story short is that I just remember Christmas mornings with him. I remember looking at the stars with him. I remember driving over the bridges with him. I can remember going through one of the tunnels and my grandmother turning around saying to me, "Now, your grandfather helped design this, But he was incredibly intelligent. He was so warm-hearted, and yet you knew that. I can remember one time I said something bad to my sister, and he picked me up by my ankles and spanked me. So he was a tough guy too. And by the way, you may not know this, but he was a decorated person in World War I. So anyway, but I just thank you for honoring him, Gary especially, and the rest of you too. It means the world to me, and I'm just happy I'm here. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And we have time for one more question. So, yes, sir.
I'm afraid I have two questions.
Okay.
The first question is, will the new design retain the access tunnel to the riverbed? I'm an avid cyclist, and many nights and days it was easy access to the floor of the river. The second question is along the lines of the other gentleman. The experience of crossing the bridges right now in the old 6th Street Bridge was being in kind of a no man's land. It's very isolated up there. To be a pedestrian or a cyclist, and homeless people in the past have made encampments and taken advantage of that. So, just extending the question, what are the plans to deal with that with the new 6th Street Bridge?
To answer, the tunnel is still there that connects to the river. And secondly, there will be an active construction project ongoing building the park starting this year. So there'll be a lot of activity around there. And then once again, homelessness is bigger than the 6th Street Viaduct. So it's it's another part of I've built over 2,500 in the last few years of interim shelters, interim places. So it's an ongoing challenge, but everybody's very much aware, and we'll work together to find homes for people.
Okay, and with that, I think we're going to thank our panelists for coming in and informing us and sharing what they what they had for the film, for the bridge that's opening soon. And I thank all of you for coming out here. This was actually something we had hoped to do 2 years ago, but it is finally happened, and I'm glad you're all here to share it with us. And so we need to wrap things up, and if you want to hang out in the lobby for a few minutes before we have to leave, you can certainly do that. But I do want to thank Jim and Andrea, and especially Gary Lee Moore, who I didn't know your retirement is imminent. So I wish you congratulations on your retirement and whatever you choose to do next, and hopefully your successor will be able to operate out from under the shadow that you have no doubt created for them for all your years. Thank you, everybody.